My wife was left alone for 3 weeks, and I wish she just cheated instead, because what I came home to was worse than anything I could have ever imagined. When I pushed open that front door, the house smelled different, like stale air, rot, and something else I couldn't place. The living room was dark, even though the blinds were wide open. Dishes were stacked on every surface, flies buzzing around them. And my wife? She was just sitting there, not on the couch, not in her favorite recliner, but cross-legged on the floor, her eyes staring blankly at nothing. She didn't even look up when I walked in. I called her name. Nothing. I touched her shoulder. Still nothing. Then finally, she turned her head slowly toward me and whispered something I'll never forget. "They said you'd never come back." My heart stopped. I didn't know who they were, and I didn't want to know. But I had no choice. And that's where I'll pause, because to understand how things got this bad, I have to take you back to when I left her alone for those 3 weeks. It started with a work trip. My company had been downsizing, and my boss basically told me if I didn't accept this last-minute assignment overseas, I might as well pack up my desk. 3 weeks in another country, away from home, away from my wife. I didn't like it, but we needed the money. Rent was high, bills were piling up, and my wife was in between jobs. Now, I need to explain something about her. My wife isn't the kind of person who thrives on being alone. She loves company, conversation, noise in the background. Silence eats her alive. When I told her I'd be gone for almost a month, she tried to smile, but I could see her hands shaking as she folded laundry. 3 weeks isn't that long, she said, but her voice cracked. I kissed her, told her it would be okay, promised to call every night. At the airport, I watched her wave at me until I disappeared past security. She looked small, like a child being left behind. The first few days went fine. I called her every evening. She sounded tired, but normal. Told me about the shows she was binge-watching, how she ordered takeout so she wouldn't have to cook for one. Then by the 5th day, her tone started changing. She didn't sound tired anymore. She sounded flat. I'm okay. That's all. Nothing more, no details, no laughter, just those 2 words. By the end of the first week, she stopped answering my calls. I thought maybe she was upset at me for being gone so long, or maybe her phone died. I texted, no reply. I emailed, nothing. Eventually, I got through once, and her voice didn't even sound like hers. "They keep knocking." "Who? What are you talking about?" I asked. But she hung up. That's when the lows began. I couldn't focus at work. My coworkers noticed me spacing out during meetings. I started drinking at night just to fall asleep, telling myself she was just lonely, maybe even playing a joke to scare me for leaving her alone. But deep down, something felt wrong. When the 2nd week rolled in, I begged my boss to let me cut the trip short. He refused. Said if I left early, I'd lose my job. I felt stuck, guilty, and powerless. Every time I closed my eyes, I pictured her pacing around the house, staring at the walls, waiting for me. Then came the high, the point when everything tilted from unsettling to terrifying. A neighbor texted me out of nowhere. "Hey, haven't seen your wife in days. Her car hasn't moved, lights are always off. You sure she's okay?" My chest tightened. I called her again. No answer. I called the neighbor, asked him to check on her. 10 minutes later, he called me back, his voice shaking. "Man, I don't know what's going on in there." She opened the door but wouldn't talk, just stood there staring. I asked her if she was okay and she slammed the door in my face. I swear I heard someone whispering inside, but it didn't sound like her. That night, I didn't sleep at all. I booked the earliest flight home I could, even if it meant risking my job. By the time I landed and made the cab ride to our house, my hands wouldn't stop shaking. I tried to convince myself it was nothing, that maybe she'd had a breakdown, maybe she was just mad at me. Anything was better than what my gut told me. But when I finally opened that door, what I saw, I can't unsee it. And that's where I'll stop this chapter. Because what happened next was the moment that made me wish with every bone in my body that my wife had just cheated instead. The moment I stepped further into the living room, my legs almost gave out. My wife didn't blink, didn't flinch, didn't even seem to breathe. She just kept staring at me with those empty eyes, her lips moving silently like she was talking to someone who wasn't there. I dropped my bag, rushed over to her, and shook her shoulders. "What's wrong? Who's been here?" That's when she snapped. She clawed at me, screaming words I couldn't make sense of, as if she wasn't speaking English anymore. Her nails tore into my skin. I backed away in shock. She dropped to the floor, rocking back and forth, whispering, "They said you'd leave me here. They promised you wouldn't come back. And they were right. Until now." My blood ran cold. I wanted to demand answers, but her eyes darted toward the kitchen, as if something or someone was standing there. Slowly, I turned to look. Nothing. Just shadows. But I swear on my life, I felt watched. To understand how she got to this point, I have to tell you about the calls I never mentioned earlier. Around the 2nd week, in between her ignoring me and giving those cryptic answers, I started getting private number calls. At first, I dismissed them. Wrong numbers happen. But when I picked up one night, the line wasn't empty. Someone was breathing. Slow. heavy, too deliberate. I thought it was some creep prank calling me. I hung up, but the next night, same thing. By the third night, a voice finally spoke, low, almost a whisper. She doesn't like the dark. I froze. Who is this? I barked into the phone, but they hung up. I tried to call back, but of course you can't call back a private number. I told myself not to panic, that maybe it was a coincidence, but then the messages started. Little notes slipped under our door, according to the neighbor. Notes that I didn't see until I came back, but he described them. Don't leave her alone. He thought it was some kind of prank, maybe kids in the neighborhood. I wanted to believe that too, but I couldn't shake the way my wife's voice sounded in those short, strange calls. When I returned and saw her in that ruined living room, the reality hit me, harder than I could handle. She hadn't just been lonely, something or someone had been here. After I managed to calm her down, I carried her to the couch. She clutched my arm so tightly her nails dug into me again, whispering that if I left her side, they'd come back. Who's coming back? I begged. She just shook her head, repeating the same thing. They knock, and they wait. They know when I'm alone. It felt like being dropped into a nightmare with no warning. I tried to distract her, making her tea, cleaning up the mess in the living room, but she wouldn't let me leave the couch for more than a minute. The whole time she kept glancing at the front door. At one point she leaned in close and whispered in my ear, her breath trembling, "Don't open it, no matter what you hear." That night, I thought things had finally settled. She curled up beside me, exhausted, and fell asleep. I sat awake, heart racing, listening to every creak of the house. For a while it was quiet. Until the knocking started. 3 sharp knocks at the front door. I froze. My wife's eyes flew open instantly. She grabbed my arm so hard I thought she'd snap it. She hissed, "Don't move." The knocking came again, louder this time. Whoever it was didn't call out, didn't ring the bell, just knock, knock, knock. I stood up, ready to confront whoever was messing with us, but she yanked me back down with surprising strength. Her eyes were wide open with terror. "If you open it, you'll never come back," she whispered. The knocking stopped. I thought it was over, but then the sound of the doorknob turning. Slow, deliberate. Metal scraping metal. Someone, or something, was trying to come inside. The doorknob turned slowly, rattling against the lock like someone testing it. My chest pounded so hard I thought it might explode. My wife buried her face into my arm, trembling, whispering over and over, "Don't, don't, don't." Then it stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the sound itself. It stretched on so long that I began to doubt I'd heard anything at all. Maybe it was the wind. Maybe it was my imagination. I stood halfway between fear and denial until something shattered that fragile balance. A voice. On the other side of the door, soft, low, and deliberate. "Please let me in. She's so lonely." I leapt to my feet, rage overtaking fear. "Who the hell are you?" I shouted. "Get away from my house." No answer. Just the sound of footsteps walking away. Slow, dragging, almost mocking. When I turned back, my wife was sobbing silently, her hands clamped over her ears as if the words themselves had hurt her. The rest of that night crawled by. I barely blinked, sitting upright with a baseball bat clutched in my hands. My wife wouldn't let go of my shirt, like if she released me even for a second, I'd disappear. Morning finally came, and the sunlight almost tricked me into believing everything had been a nightmare. But the evidence was still there. The lock scratched up, and the knob bent slightly out of shape. Someone had tried to get inside. I called the police. They sent an officer who looked more annoyed than concerned. He checked the door, took a few notes, and shrugged. Could have been some local kids messing around. Happens more than you'd think. I wanted to scream at him. Kids don't leave whispered notes under doors. Kids don't call from private numbers saying things only my wife would fear. But he was already walking away, promising to patrol the area. When he left, I turned to my wife. "Why didn't you tell me sooner? Why didn't you call the cops?" Her face crumpled. "Because they said if I told anyone, they'd come inside." And I believed them. For a few days, things were calmer. No knocking, no phone calls, no shadows in the corner of my vision. I even convinced her to eat again, to shower, to sleep without clutching my arm the whole night. I almost convinced myself that maybe it had just been stress. Maybe loneliness had pushed her mind to the edge and I had arrived just in time to pull her back. But then I found the notebook. It was tucked under the couch cushions, pages filled with frantic handwriting. Some sentences were crossed out so hard that the paper had torn. Others were written over and over like she was being forced to memorize them. "He won't come back. You are not alone. The knocking means yes. Don't look at the window." My blood ran cold. I confronted her with it, holding the notebook in my hands. Her reaction wasn't guilt or fear, it was rage. She ripped it from me, clutching it to her chest like a child holding onto a teddy bear. "You weren't supposed to see that," she screamed, tears streaming down her face. "They'll know now. They'll know you're here too." Her words echoed in the quiet house, and for the first time I realized she wasn't just scared of them, she was scared for me. That night I decided enough was enough. I wasn't going to let whoever or whatever had done this to her keep winning. I sat by the door again, baseball bat in hand, waiting. Hours passed. Nothing. My eyelids grew heavy. I fought to keep them open. Just as I began drifting, I heard it. Not knocking this time. Scratching. Long, slow scratches running up and down the front door. The sound of nails or claws dragging against wood. I froze, every muscle in my body locking up. My wife stirred awake on the couch, sat up and whispered, with terror in her voice I'd never heard before, "They found you too." And then, something slammed against the door so hard the entire frame rattled. The door shook under the weight of the slam. Dust drifted from the frame, and for one horrifying second I thought the hinges might snap. My wife screamed, clinging to me like her life depended on it. Another slam, harder. The wood groaned. I tightened my grip on the bat, heart hammering so loud it drowned out every other sound. I wanted to charge the door, to scream, to fight back, but the truth is, I was terrified. Whoever was out there wasn't just knocking anymore. They wanted in. And then, just as suddenly as it started, it stopped. Silence. The house held its breath. My wife's sobs filled the air as she buried her face in my chest. I waited, bat raised, ready for another hit, but none came. When I finally dared to peek through the pee hole, my stomach lurched. No one was there. Just the empty porch, the quiet street, the faint sound of leaves rustling in the wind. The next morning, the damage was clear. Deep cracks ran across the doorframe, the wood splintered from the force of the blows. Whoever had been outside had enough strength to nearly tear the door off its hinges. I wanted to call the police again, but my wife stopped me, grabbing my wrist with a desperation that chilled me. They don't believe. They don't care. If you call them again, they'll only laugh. And then they'll take it out on me. Her words cut into me. Was this paranoia, a breakdown? Or had she been telling the truth all along? I decided instead to do what I could to make her feel safe. I reinforced the door with extra locks, screwed wooden planks across the back entrance, even bought cameras to mount outside, anything to give her peace of mind. For a day or two, it worked. She managed to eat without shaking. She even hummed a little tune while washing the dishes, and for the first time in weeks, I saw a glimmer of the woman I married. But just when I thought things might be finally turning around, the cameras changed everything. It was a Wednesday night when the first alert pinged my phone, motion detected at the front porch. My stomach flipped. I opened the app, heart in my throat. The screen showed the porch, empty at first, then after a flicker of static, a figure appeared. Tall, thin, dressed in black. The image was grainy, the face blurred, but I could see its head tilt slowly toward the camera, as if it knew I was watching. And then the feed cut out. I rushed to the door, bat in hand, ready to confront it, but when I flung it open, nothing. Just night air, cold and still. My wife appeared behind me, eyes wide with terror. She whispered, "You let them see you." I tried to brush it off, to tell myself it was just a glitch, some drunk passerby, anything, but the next day another alert came. This time, it was the backyard. I opened the feed and my blood froze. The figure was closer now, standing just feet away from the back door, still blurred, still faceless, and as I watched, it raised a hand slowly, deliberately, and pressed it flat against the glass. The camera glitched. Static ripped across the screen. When the picture came back, the figure was gone. I rushed outside, circling the house with my bat, searching every corner. Nothing. Not even footprints. But when I returned inside, my wife was waiting in the hallway, clutching that notebook to her chest. "They won't stop now," she said, tears streaking down her face. "You should have never come back." That night, just as I began to drift into uneasy sleep, I woke to the sound of the back door creaking. Slow. Steady. Like it was opening from the inside. The sound of the back door creaking open jolted me upright. My wife was already sitting up in bed, her eyes wide and unblinking, as if she'd been waiting for it. "They're inside," she whispered. I grabbed the bat, heart thundering, and crept toward the hallway. Every step felt heavier than the last. The creak of the door was still echoing in my ears, even though the house had gone silent again. When I reached the kitchen, the back door was shut. Perfectly shut. The new locks I had bolted in were untouched, but the air was colder, like someone had just walked through. And then I heard it. Soft footsteps upstairs. My blood turned to ice. I bolted up the stairs, gripping the bat so tight my hands ached. Every nerve in my body screamed for me to run the other way, but I couldn't leave her alone, not after everything. At the top of the stairs, the hallway stretched out before me, dimly lit by the nightlight we always kept on. The sound of footsteps had stopped, but I knew something was up there. I forced myself toward our bedroom. When I pushed the door open, my wife wasn't in bed anymore. She was standing at the far corner, facing the wall, notebook clutched to her chest. "Where are they?" I demanded. She turned slowly, her face pale, eyes glassy. "They don't want me anymore. They want you." For the first time, I felt it too. A presence, heavy, suffocating, pressing against me like unseen hands. The air buzzed, my skin prickling with static, my breath caught in my throat. The closet door behind me rattled. Once, twice, then burst open. The bat nearly slipped from my grip as darkness seemed to spill out. Not just shadows, but something thicker, deeper, like smoke that swallowed the light. And within that blackness, shapes moved. Too tall, too thin, bending in ways that weren't human. Their voices were whispers, layered over each other, crawling into my ears. "You left her. You left her. You left her." I swung the bat wildly, but it went through the air like I was fighting smoke. My wife screamed, covering her ears. The whispers grew louder, drowning everything out, until all I could hear was my own heartbeat trying to escape my chest. Then, silence. I blinked, and the figures were gone. The darkness retreated, swallowed back into the closet. The air warmed. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped the bat. My wife collapsed to the floor, sobbing. "It's over, for now." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to convince myself it was just a nightmare, exhaustion, paranoia. But when I looked down at the closet door, the wood was warped, cracked outward, not inward, but as if something had forced its way out. And then I saw it. Scratched into the inside of the door, deep grooves carved into the wood. "Welcome home." That's when I realized the truth. I thought I had saved her by coming back. I thought I had been the one protecting her. But the moment I stepped into that house, I hadn't rescued her at all. I had joined her.